Yep, and the bottom left here in the red, the young Terran player. It's Oriana.
In the top right side, we are looking at the main base of our Chinese veteran. He has made the journey to America quite a few times because he was always competing in WCS Premier League. That was also run by NESL, but a lot of those events were also on the West Coast. This is our Chinese Protoss representing Invictus Gaming as well, MacSed. I do think we have to give MacSed some kudos because he and Jim were definitely the OG Phoenix Colossus believers before Phoenix Colossus really became a very standard and common and popular opening among the best Protoss players in the world. But MacSed and Jim, the OG Phoenix Colossus boys. No Storm, Phoenix Colossus all the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's kind of fun too. I've really enjoyed charting the evolution of Phoenix Colossus over the last, really, 7 years maybe. Because originally, right, it was 5 Phoenix into a bunch of Colossus, right? There was this very designed, very specific build order. And you know, if I'm off base here, please, Roddy, as you know, one of the men who chronicled it, let me know. But that was like Heart of the Swarm Phoenix Colossus. And then we started to see, kind of fell off for a little bit. We didn't see it a ton at the start of Legacy of the Void. And then we started to see it again, but it was with more Phoenix. And then it's like, okay, well, Stats is building 9 Phoenix here. He's going up into the double digits sometimes. And we're starting to see the style evolve quite a bit. Then we move into Phoenix Charge Lot as well to give you a little bit of room. And I don't know, I enjoy watching ideas kind of evolve as players get a better understanding of things. So that's kind of been one of my favorite meta storylines, I guess, build order storylines that we've been able to follow over the last 7-8 years.
Yeah, obviously it was a different time when the Vipers were not part of the game. Not having to worry about Parasitic Bomb was kind of nice. It's like, okay, Fungo is scary, but not as scary as Parasitic Bomb is to a million Phoenix. And I think with Terran as well, it just kind of took a little while before Terrans truly found, like, all right, how do we want to deal with this, right? Do we try to overwhelm it with Vikings? Do we start believing in the Liberator? Is it maybe just all about the bio? And I do think that Terrans made very good progress over the years in understanding how many Marines to build, how Marauders can still be very useful in fighting Phoenix Colossus, and obviously the importance of Ghost, where for a while it was like, oh yeah, Ghost not really one of the first units I want to get there, but then we realized that Phoenixes do like to clump up, and an EMP on top of a bunch of Phoenix, that's ultra nice. Not just because you can drain the energy and the Phoenixes can lift ground units anymore, but Phoenix have a decent amount of shields, so they are very vulnerable to EMPs.
And there they are. So it's always interesting, again, like, do you commit to that, do you not? Hellion tries to find his way in, and actually both Hellion and Reaper get into the main base. They get a full scout here of the fact that a Robo and a Stargate are both up before the 4-minute mark. This is very early tech coming out of MacSed here, Roddy.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why we're talking about him being one of the OG Phoenix Colossus boys, mate, because I do think that is going to happen here. Oriana will still let the Raven finish up, and that's obviously always interesting to me. I like to joke that unless your name is Maru or Foxer, the American Terran player, that's a bit of a meme, but he is a good player, that you really should not go Raven against Phoenix, and one of the main reasons because Phoenixes deal double damage, but Oriana saves the Raven. That was a great auditor, kills a Phoenix. I can't even really blame MacSed for going for it there, because I thought, okay, maybe he loses the Phoenix, but if you trade out 1 Phoenix for the Raven, that's still a good trade. 6 saves so far. Maybe Oriana is going to make a statement here, Bio, and he says, all right, you don't have to be Maru or Foxer. Your name can be Oriana too, and you can get away with the Raven.
And we talked about going into this how it seems like Oriana was taking a significant page, not out of Maru's book necessarily, but certainly out of Oliveira's. And actually, you know, if you think about it, they both changed their name. Time changes his name to Oliveira. Blooming changed his name to Oriana. And I'm not saying that it's roughly the same number of letters and kind of the same style of word, but I'm not saying it's not either.
Because it both starts with an O and it ends with an A.
Exactly. There we go.
All right, mate. Yeah, I love it. I can see it. Meme side, great start, obviously. Killing a Phoenix is nice because for MacSed, it's all about just getting a high number of Phoenixes out. Phoenixes, they just perform so much better in higher numbers. Goes for most units, but especially with the Phoenix, because obviously once you lift units, that unit will not fight. So you need additional Phoenix to then actually finish the job. And if you lose one of your first Phoenixes, that obviously means that you will always have less DPS and less lifts available in the first place. Oriana knows that this is happening, and for a split second he did not care at all as he was moving out. But then maybe he looked at his army and he's like, my army is actually still rather tiny. Maybe I should wait until I have Stim, Combat Shield and +1. That first move out is obviously going to be a big one, right? Because if the interference matrix lands on the Colossus, the rest of this Protoss army, BO, it's hot garbage. There's no other way to put it. But if the Raven dies and the Colossus stays alive, then suddenly all these units from Protoss work together perfectly.
And that's where losing that Phoenix early just really hurts. Yeah, you know, it is 3 versus 4, but it makes you wonder, right? With the Raven just a little bit further forward, maybe 4 Phoenix will allow you to knock that down, but it gets across the map pretty successfully here. And now MacSed, he's gonna have tried it. He needs to try to bait this out, right? If he allows Oriana to take a fight into MacSed's natural with the Colossus there shut down, Oriana's gonna run right on through. But if he can go and bait out a fight a little, and he's not doing this, which I really think he needs to. If he can take a fight out, you know, in the choke right here, maybe. Take a choke in the natural or in the middle of the map, and you get the force fields out, you bait out those interference matrices, then it's kind of happy. But for now, I mean, Oriana, he's just kind of waffling. What's he waiting on?
I think he was mostly worried that if he would jump the gun, that he would lose his Raven. And without the Raven, this army just becomes a whole lot less powerful. He is obviously going at home. He is going up to 3 bases. I just think he was hoping, obviously, that MacSed would split off the Phoenix, would do something crazy, try to pick up reinforcements, because then he could land the interference matrix. I just think that he felt the opportunity wasn't quite there yet. You test the waters and you're like, okay, it's too cold. I'm gonna wait a little bit until I heat up a bit more over here on the shore. I think that's kind of what happened there. Obviously, his army does grow very quickly in this phase in the game, with all these barracks and factories pumping out units quickly. And as one of the observers, I believe, got picked off there, so that's good army movement as well by the Terran. I don't hate what he's doing. That army looks feisty, looks powerful, and it has kind of reached the point where even if the interference matrix does not go off, the rest of the Terran army is now a whole lot better, right? With the tanks sieging up, and this is going to be really interesting as MacSed is a bit out of position, and Oriana is just going to go for it, and I think it's a brilliant call.
Oh, he is. The shield battery goes down, which is really what you want. There we're going to see, there we go, the shutdown on both Colossus. Tanks fire away at them. And you talked about how bad this army is. Oriana, he can fight the army or he can fight the Nexus, or realistically, he can just get both. So a third Colossus will pop out. The Nexus does fall. Probe's hiding away just a little bit, but now there are 3 Colossus able to fire here, Roddy. So Oriana, as he backs away, I mean, he's just still annihilates everything.
Yeah, I actually think we can stim forward, man. There's enough Marauders in the mix to go for that stim forward, as he does get one of the Colossus. The Phoenixes are going to go ahead and try to lift the Marauders, but you can see that the Marines are running away. That's that Terran micro I was talking about earlier. In the end, MacSed gets a decent cleanup, and now he should maybe be able to lift the tanks as well. And I almost think that MacSed, his best chance is to just go ahead and counterattack immediately, right? Keep on warping in Archon, Zealots, Colossus, Phoenix, whatever. Because if he does nothing, he's just going to fall way too far behind economically. But the reinforcements have already arrived. Both players were floating some money during all of that. But Oriana, needless to say, got a decent or a great amount of damage done even there. And he's got to be more than happy with how this game is going.
I can't help but feel, though, that he made the decision to kill the Nexus to get economic damage and then take the fight. I can't help but feel that he, especially with, oh, well, don't kill your command center. There we go. I cannot help but feel that if he just attacked the army that MacSed had, I mean, with 2 Colossus shut down, sweep through it, and then you return and kill the Nexus, I think he actually ends the game. Now, I understand the desire, you know, win ahead, get more ahead, etc., kill the bases, but he did give MacSed a bit of a counterattack opportunity. I mean, losing, he doesn't really have any Vikings right now. At all. He's got 3 tanks, he's got a couple ghosts. He doesn't have really the best anti-Colossus answers.
Yeah, especially once those matrices landed, I do agree with you that he could have just stimmed forward and taken that fight immediately, because he would have obliterated the last few Protoss units that were there that were actually able to fight, because the Phoenix weren't quite there yet. So he kind of gave MacSed a chance, but we cannot ignore the fact that that was still a good attack, right? He got a lot of damage done. He got himself in a great position economically. He's got some tanks here. I'd love to kind of see him siege up the tanks, though, as he's dropping a 4 CC on location. Now, all the tanks are on siege. I find it a bit crazy. Now the goals get lifted as well. At least there is a missile turret to help out there a little bit. Colossus are exposed. Marines and Marauders coming in from the bottom. One Colossus falls. I do think Oriana's going to be still more than fine, despite the fact that not a single tank was sieged there. But that missile turret, it got a crazy amount of damage off. That turret right there was the MVP, man.
How many kills is this turret? It's only got 1 kill, actually, but that's a kill on a Colossus, so you can't really complain. And at this point, yeah, this has been a back and forth game where one player runs across the map, gets heavy damage, loses a good majority of their army in the exchange. Got to go the other way now as fourth base does get canceled, but I'm not gonna lie, Roddy, you know, losing Marines and Marauders, maybe a tank, which is what Oriana dealt with, that's a lot easier to stomach than losing 3 Colossus on the other side.
Yep, because you only have one Robo, you only have one Stargate. And something I wanted to mention earlier when MacSed was floating some money during that first big fight and he was losing the Nexus, is that the macro Phoenix Colossus is very funny. Because at first, it's literally like the easiest thing to play as a Protoss, right? The units are built one at a time, and the units are expensive. So you're basically just building probes, a Phoenix and a Colossus. But at one point, you reach that weird tipping point where your economy becomes too big, too powerful for just one Stargate, one Robo. But then it's like, when do you get the second Robo? When do you get the second Stargate? When do you get the Fleet Beacon? All of that is actually kind of hard to manage, and that's where you can see that MacSed was struggling a little bit as well. He felt it was just a little bit too early to drop those buildings, but by not dropping them in the first place, he was floating money. We've got that War Prison that I believe showed up one more time, drop a couple of Zealots in the main base, but this Terran army, man, it's just so freaking powerful. MacSed is in trouble. I do think he's done a decent job in trying to still make something of this game, but I think his army is just kind of weak. Oriana picks up everything and goes for a 5 medevac bio drop into the main base. There is a Robo there that's somewhat exposed, and the tanks from the low ground, they should still be able to help out a little bit here, right?
Yeah, certainly if you charge into it like that. There we go, EMPs. They pop the Archons immediately, and the Zealots have no HP either. So, hey, you know what? Nice lifts. The Phoenix will actually kill both tanks, but you need something on the ground, Roddy, and that's just not going to work out super well. The Colossus are dead. Another one is going to pop out, but I think it's going to die pretty much as it pops. There we go. So Oriana targets this down, and MacSed, he's just not finding the value that he's been looking for in this game. He had, he did counter. He had opportunities, but sometimes you need a little bit more than Phoenix and a couple Colossus, and even more importantly, Roddy, you need shield batteries, and you need to keep your army defensively in position. And MacSed just didn't do that 5 minutes ago.
He actually had 2 Widow Mines that could have literally burrowed in the mineral lane at the topside base of Royal Blood here, the 12 o'clock one, but instead he brought the mines to the center of the map. Now they will get blown up by the Disruptor, and these mines were permanently cloaked because the armory is done. So if you would have just put those mines in the mineral line, MacSed would have not been able to mine up the 3rd base at all. But obviously Oriana probably feels that he is seconds away from closing this game out. He's about to get +2 attack, he's about to get +2 armor. Let's just go ahead and let these barracks just pump out a few more units. Maybe regenerate a little bit of the energy on the medevacs, because they have been working very hard. As he's now dropping another CC, a second starport, and a how's that thing called again? Another Fleet Beacon. The Fusion Core, there we go. Drawing a blank here in the early afternoon. I think he's ready to end it, but what he should make sure of is that he does not allow MacSed to max out, because that would just be silly. He has an army that's better, it's bigger, it has potential to end the game. We gotta go ahead and try to end this game when we can.
Yeah, certainly, and with the amount of ghosts that he has, he can EP everything. So there we go, the Archons, they don't have much HP anymore. Widow Mines go off on so many of these Zealots. And yeah, you got some Zealots, you got 1 Colossus, 1 Disruptor. And again, we're seeing Oriana just commit to the army. Kill the army, then you can kill the base. There we go. Okay. Now he sees the opportunity, and there's a Disruptor shot that really doesn't get that much at all. And Oriana, he's finally ending this game. He really does seem to care about killing infrastructure more than just kind of killing his opponent, doesn't he?
Yeah, maybe lacking a tiny bit of that killer instinct, but he can also just be playing it very safe, because this is a match where the tournament life is on the line, and I guess he just really wants to make sure that he does not throw. He doesn't want to take bad fights, he wants to take the guaranteed damage on the economy. And obviously he's done a great job in this game because Phoenix Colossus is a very strong composition from the Protoss. It's a build that's very popular on all the levels. I think at the lower levels and the higher levels as well. Even the best Protoss players in the world like to use it. But it's not a composition where the Protoss can lose his entire army and then casually rebuild it. That's just not a thing. These units are too expensive. They take a long time to produce. MacSed still trying, still battling, but he has to know that this one is ultra over as he's going to lose all the probes there, lose the Nexus. GG gets called. Oriana looks good in game 1, takes the 1-0 lead.
He certainly does, but you know, Roddy, I got a question for you. You know, Oriana, he didn't kill the army multiple times. He killed economy time and time again. And well, that's not quite spoon worthy, right? That's not drops killing everything. That's like, do we start to call Oriana like the ladle Terran? You know, like
we can roll with it if he does it again in game 2 or maybe even in the playoffs if he does make it there. Obviously, he still has a couple of series to go, but we'll keep it in mind, Bia. We'll take it for now. We'll put it on the shelf next to us, and maybe we'll whip it out back later if he does turn this into a magical run.
Put it on the shelf with the rest of Bayo's bad ideas. Got it. Thank you for letting me down gently, Roddy.
I feel like you only have great ideas, mate. I've been loving all the broadcasts that you've been on. The one with Ravi, top notch.
Oh, well, you know, that's just, you put enough chaos in a corner and something's going to happen. It's like, you know, like if you're, what is it? We're going to, actually, I'm losing the analogy, but that's fine. Like you mix a couple things together and you get a reaction and it's something new and you don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be, yeah, it's like vinegar and baking soda. It's an explosion. There we go. That's good enough.
Okay. I was thinking of Coca-Cola and Mentos.
Also fair. You can build like backyard rockets out of that, right?
Yes, I've seen that. It looks dangerous. I've never done it myself, but I've seen the videos.
Yeah, as someone who, you know, has studied the development of rockets and, you know, technically has a degree in the development of rockets, I can tell you that Mentos and Coke is by far the best rocket fuel available. It better than, you know, liquid hydrogen, you know, yeah, you know, liquid oxygen altogether, kerosene, all these things. No. Mentos and Coke. By far, best. It's going to get us to Mars. It's going to get us to the Caprulu sector.
Sure, mate. We'll get there eventually. Did you see what just happened on Battle.net? Where the referee was like, we need a minute for Oriana. He choked on his water.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that's honestly, I can only explain that in one way. And that is that these guys really do feel nervous, right? For a lot of us, it's just we hop on, we get ready to cast some StarCraft. We hope we have fun games. But for a lot of these players, these are very big moments. They look forward to the ESL Master Regional tournaments. They don't have to defeat a Maru or a Serral to make some prize money. No, this is their region. They can compete against players from their own nation that they know kind of well, or at least within the same part of the world. And this is where the realistic great runs are possible. A lot more than like, oh, maybe I can show up at Katowice and win it, even though Oliveira kind of did that. But, you know, for these guys, it's always a big moment. And now apparently we're getting so nervous that we're choking on water. But I'm glad to see that he's okay. And we can start off game 2, Babylon. I'm honestly expecting kind of the same thing from MacSed, because he's just not your Blink Stalker boy. And I think Oriana should have a couple of great tank pushes on this map against Phoenix Colossus. Cool. I'm excited for it. He looked good in game 1. I'd say it was a well-deserved victory. Let's see what happens on Babylon.
I can press the button to bring us into game. That would be great. So we're here now in the bottom right in the red. He's the Terran player, Oriana.
And in the top left side of Babylon, we are looking at the main base of our Chinese Protoss, who impressed us in some of the tournaments we saw over the last few months outside of the ESL Masters Asia, but he's having a tough time so far. 1-2 record in the group means if he loses this series, he is down and out. He needs to win 2 games in a row to keep his tournament hopes and dreams alive. The Chinese veteran, Invictus Gaming, MacSed.
Although, Roddy, you talk about how the water is the mark of nerves. Does that mean I'm just like nervous in my everyday life a lot? Because I have definitely like you take a drink of water and you're like, wow, I'm dead now. This is not great.
I mean, it often only happens if your thoughts are elsewhere, right? Because if you're just, oh, I'm thirsty, I'm having a very chill It's a sunny afternoon. I'm sitting outside. I feel like you don't randomly choke on water. It's more like when you're in the middle of something, you're like, okay, gotta do it quick. And then while you're drinking, you're not even thinking about the process of drinking. You're thinking of like, all right, how am I gonna bop this nerd in game 2? I feel like that's when the choking happens a lot more than when there is nothing going on.
Well, luckily we didn't have Oriana choke in game 1, so that's good news at the very least. And you know what? In the balance of things, I would much rather choke on my water than choke on an elimination game. So, you know, Roddy, it works out.
Yeah, no, I can confirm that. Well, it depends how severe the actual water choking is, right? But yeah, the tiny one where it's just like, okay, moving on. Yeah, I'll take that over a bad performance in an important video game. I think a lot of us are with you there. What are you expecting of the Nerds on Babylon, BO? Do you think that MacSed will stick to the Phoenix Colossus we know that he loves and that he grew up with? Or do you think that he's willing to switch it up on the biggest moment for him in this tournament?
I think we see Stargate again. It's a super stable style. It's really popular. I think there's a shot we go Phoenix Charizard here, again, just because Babylon is shorter and you maybe want something that's going to allow you to withstand maybe Terran pressure that happens a little bit earlier. But there we go. Okay, Stargate is on the way for MacSed, so at least Nostrabeo is somewhat correct. But on the flip side, I know, Roddy, you were talking about what we were going to see in game 2, right? Is it going to be from Oriana? Does he have a tank push here? Well, for now, that's a second barrack, so at the very least, we're going to have a little bit earlier bio than we might otherwise expect.
Yeah, he could go for the good old Ryong special, right? Where it's barracks, expand factory into 2 more barracks, and then you can still make a tank push. It's just a tank push without Medivacs or Vikings or Raven, but it's a tank push with a whole lot of bio, and that is honestly going to be very good against Phoenix Colossus as well, where sure, we may not have that Raven that could potentially drop the interference matrix, but what we will have is a lot of tanks, and if you force the Phoenixes to fly forward, but your Marine count is high, then you can just gun down the Marines. I think it's a solid build choice for Oriana here as well, if that is what he decides to go for.
And for MacSed, we talked about what are we going to see. Well, it does seem like we're going to have Phoenix Colossus once again, because again, really quick Robo, no Twilight, and you certainly can have enough out to deal. You can get a Colossus or 2 out by a lot of these Terran pushes. It's a little dicey if you're trying to deal with the Ryong push, right? That 6-ish minute stim. As there we go, very quick stim coming out of Oriana here. But, generally, you can kind of put yourself in a decent spot, even if it is kind of just Adepts and Immortals and things of that nature. So now it's up to MacSed to figure out what's happening, to make sure he gets the proper scout, to figure out that, okay, well, there are 2 barracks, there's another one on the way, but it was before the starport we saw that second barracks. So, again, quicker stim, these ideas that you do have to be aware of. And despite the fact that MacSed's got Phoenix and technically has this really strong scouting ability, he really hasn't seen much.
No, he hasn't seen much, and sometimes, oh my goodness, the Phoenix dies to the lock-on. You always think that the lock-on is about to break on. You're like, okay, and then we're gonna have the speech about how taking a lot of damage on your Phoenix is bad. The losing a Phoenix again that early, somewhat similar to what we saw in the previous game. It is very painful, man, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know when Oriana's moving out. I don't know if he wants to wait for a bunch of Medivacs or if we're actually going to go for some Vikings to just apply the pressure. What I do know is that if you're a MacSed, going up to 3 bases against this build, I just think it's very hard. But you also cannot play Phoenix Colossus forever on 2 base, because at that point you're just going to float too many minerals, you're not going to have enough gas, and you can't let him get bunkers or missile turrets and a bunch of tanks sieged up at the bottom of your ramp either. So MacSed is going to try. He is going to drop that Nexus. He also already drops the Twilight console. I am very curious to see how MacSed thinks he can survive the first push, because I just feel that his units are always going to be vulnerable, and it's either the main base or the natural or the third base where there's going to be a wide open area for these stimmed bio units to just do their thing. I feel that MacSed is going for a build that would make sense to me on, like, if he does this on altitude, I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, like, we'll see, it's a long map, he's gonna have a bunch of extra time. But Babylon is so small, and the push is coming, and it's gonna hit so hard, BO. I don't know what MacSed is. Yeah, I don't know how he's gonna pull it off. Let's put it like that.
And MacSed has no units in production right now. There's no Immortal, there's no Colossus. He's not developing. He's getting a Twilight now. As Stim is done, as this army's moving on the map, it is literally 1 Immortal and 1 Colossus. Like a couple of Adepts maybe. Yes, there is a shield battery here, but there's absolutely 0 shot. In fact, it was He was trying to intercept the army in the middle of the map, and he just got totally bamboozled. So it's at least man, he got the cancel on that third last possible second, which I guess is nice, but I do not like MacSed's decision making right now.
No, he was just in the dark, and maybe that also goes back to him losing a Phoenix earlier on, where he just felt that it was harder to keep track of the army. I think that MacSed can honestly be somewhat fortunate that Oriana didn't just pick up these units immediately and drop them into the main base. I do understand that Oriana didn't want to do that, because he's like, hey, I'm already happy. I got that cancel on the Nexus. So now I know that my opponent will have a hard time getting a bigger and more powerful army out, and I don't want to throw away these units, because obviously with Phoenixes out on the map, it is hard to drop the main and then evacuate safely. But since MacSed was so far out of position, like, what is he gonna do? Then recall? The moment that you recall, you can pick up the units again and once more fly them back to the low ground, maybe kill that pylon. So I think there was even more potential there for Oriana, but obviously just job well done, right? He got a very easy cancel on that Nexus, and he knows that economically this game is going perfectly fine for him, and it's gonna be very hard for MacSed to just grow at the pace that he would like to grow.
And the nice thing for Oriana in this game too, he didn't have to. Oh, more Phoenix go down. That's two. That's really not what you want. But the nice thing for Oriana, he didn't have to make a decision over whether he was going to kill the army or kill the Nexus, because there was no army to kill. So he just killed it.
Oh my goodness.
No. Okay, well, that's not good.
I actually face palmed and I closed my eyes. It hurts. It really feels like the wheels are coming off a little bit for MacSed, who I feel like truly has played some great games, guys, over the last 2-3 months in the WTO Code S. He was one of the key players for Invictus Gaming in the Code A qualifiers. He was doing very well for his team, and I was generally impressed. I was like, man, he's making all those dinosaurs out there proud, because he's obviously an older player and he's been around for so long. I battled this guy in my Warcraft 3 days, BO, like way before StarCraft 2 even came out. And I was like, man, he's playing well lately, but in this best of 3, this kind of feels that a lot of things are going wrong. Now, he does still have an army. If Oriana doesn't siege up his tanks and he takes a careless engagement, maybe the Protoss can take a great fight, but the Phoenix movement has just not been what it's supposed to be. If you want to keep your tournaments alive, dreams alive here in the ESL Masters, the competition is fierce, these players are good, and MacSed has just been making a few too many beauty errors.
Yeah, unfortunate. But Oriana, on the flip side, another Chinese Terran looking rather good in this event. So, drops up on the high ground, tanks on the low ground, and at this point, it's going to be such a challenge for MacSed to take the fight. There are no ghosts, so, you know, the Phoenix, they can get lifts on tanks and things like that, and Vikings will go down, but big problem, of course, shield battery energy being spent. Okay, so Zealots on the run by, into the third base, 6 SCVs go down, and if you can kind of stall out the push from Oriana and get this damage done on the other side, this is the path. Now, we have not walked the path just yet, but at least MacSed is starting to find and develop the path that brings him back into this game.
Yeah, no, that's nice, because he has still been building probes, and he's actually just rebuilding Phoenixes, even though he's lost a whole bunch of them already in this game. The man has lost 5 Phoenix, but he still has 5 of them around, and that double Robo is pumping out 2 Disruptors at a time. That little Zealot run-by was great, also because he won that tiny skirmish between the Vikings and the Phoenixes. And he's like, you know what, I'm just going to go up to 4 bases. And with double Robo and extra upgrades kicking in, and now even a second Forge. Like, I still think this game looks dire for MacSed, just because the upgrades are going to be a very big problem. And at the moment that the Ghosts come out, I think the Terran army is just a whole lot more powerful. But with multiple Disruptors, multiple Phoenix once more out on the map, and these Colossus, our Protoss absolutely has a chance.
Oh, he really, really does. The big problem for Oriana, though, was he did not have a Ghost Academy. He thought he could go just kill his opponent. He's not going to get it. The War Prism's going to complete the Warpin, and that is so many Zealots in the main base. Importantly, as MacSed's on the map here, so the 4th base is going to get canceled. And at this point, Oriana, he is in a bit of a problem. He's got a pickle here that he's going to have to deal with, and 10 more SCVs go down. Eventually, the Zealots get dealt with. Eventually, the War Prism is killed. But it seems like the drop on the other side will go and force MacSed back. In fact, he recalled, so yeah, you know, there's so many Phoenix there. You talked about not being sure. He's lost 10 or lost 5. Why would you rebuild it? Well, this pays for itself. Right there. The drop is, there is no damage. MacSed can move on the map once again. And now not only is this a situation where MacSed is fighting his way back in this game, this is now a situation where MacSed is arguably in the lead in this game.
Yeah, no, he's looking at a 22 worker lead. It's funny because earlier in the game, when the Phoenix count was at 3, I think going for a drop like that, picking up units flying into the main base would have been the right call. Now the Phoenix count was a whole lot higher. Oriana didn't do it after he got a cancel on the third Nexus. This time around he did. The one silver lining is that he did manage to save that command center, by the way. It looked like it was going to get cancelled, but only the SCV died. The tanks kept it safely, and we can't ignore the Terran upgrades, right? We're still looking at +2 attack, +2 armor. Viking count is starting to look better, I believe. We're at 3 right now, but 2 extra Vikings are about to pop. I still think that the Terran army is better, but obviously if MacSed lands a good Nova, yeah, then he's got all the reason in the world to feel very, very hopeful about this game. Like, that is a terrifying Protoss army, and Oriana is splitting off a lot of units. It's not quite an all-out counterattack, but it's definitely a lot of units as the Novas fly forward, and those are not the splits that Oriana needs, as he just kind of walk towards the ball.
Yeah, you split away from the ball, Oriana. You don't split into it. And now getting a couple of disruptors here is going to be very nice. And he gets the pylon as well. But MacSed just going to return back home, and you need so much damage here, right? You just such a massive shot on the other side. You lost a base. Now, EMPs on the Phoenix are going to be nice, and a lot of them are going to get targeted down here. With 10 probes hitting the deck as well. Tanks on the left side. It's getting a little chaotic. Oriana's kind of all over the place, and you got to worry, like, this is going to get shut down. At some point, you have to assume, and where he's going to be then?
Yeah, this was so chaotic. There were 4 fights happening. There were tanks all by themselves. The Bio army was chasing the Colossus army, and at one point, Max is like, wait a minute, something's tickling me. So he turns around, and in the end, I do think that MacSed gets out of all of this with a little victory. There are still some mines he needs to clean up. There are Novas being fired all over the place in the third phase as well. This has just turned into such a chaotic game. Now, Oriana was very close to getting the forges. He did unpower them, but he did not kill them. Pure chaos, as this command center, I guess a new one, has landed, but this is also not going to be able to morph into a planetary fortress. If one more ball like the previous one will connect with his Terran army, obviously this is MacSed his game. You don't often see a Protoss be this aggressive while being down 3 upgrades, but it's happening over here, Bio.
Yeah, it's really, realistically, it's even more than that, right? Because you do have ghosts on the field, so that's just, actually, we have ghosts on the field? Yeah, we do. They're not in this army, they're somewhere.
In the natural.
There we go. All right, so like, that's even more upgrades effectively here, so Widow Mines are not going to go off. Okay, ghosts are going to lose their lives to a disruptor. That's not what you want here, but the splits of Oriana, they're starting to get just a little better. But MacSed's doing it. You know, the supply is pretty heavily in his favor. At this point, he's pushing through. But okay, here comes the surround. EMPs, where are they? We don't see them, not just yet. There we go. On the army, Disruptor 1 gets targeted down, picks up a couple stuff, and the medevac drops him right on top. But despite the upgrades, it's just not mattering, Roddy. Everything's falling down here. Oriana just not in the right position enough times, and MacSed comes storming back here into this game too.
Oriana, so many things went right in the early game, and he could not close it out, and it's MacSed in the end who just like said, all right, I lose 5 Phoenix, no biggie, I rebuild 5 Phoenix, I will go double robo, I will get a couple of disruptors out. And it is safe to say that the Novas just connected in a bigger way than is supposed to happen. Sometimes we get a little bit spoiled when we look at Maru, when we look at Clem, and we look at Gabe with these picture-perfect splits, and the Terran units is always run away. And you're like, yeah, 2 or 3 disruptors is not good enough. But these guys are very good, but they're obviously not as good as a Bjorn or a Maru. And yeah, 1 or 2 disruptors can have a very big impact. And then suddenly the upgrades matter a lot less. MacSed landing a lot of good Novas. Also zoned them very nicely, especially in that final fight. I like the way that he split it off between the bottom left, into the natural, into the bottom left again, making it very hard for Oriana to get the dream engagement. Definitely the funniest moment was when Oriana was counterattacking, when he ran into that natural and in the end in the main base, because then there were tanks by themselves in the center. There were Marines and Marauders and a tank in the center of the map, not close enough to these other 2 tanks, and then the entire Bio army was just sitting in the top right side trying to chase down the Colossus, like 4 fights at once. Safe to say that all hell broke loose, but MacSed almost counted him out, as it just felt that basically it was falling apart in the early game. Did a great job in hanging in there, the experience perhaps showing that we saw XY having as well. And he's still in it. He still has a chance to improve his record to 2-2 and potentially even make it into the playoffs. We didn't know what to expect coming into this best of 3 BO after 2 games. I still don't know what to expect. I feel that Oriana's playing better, but he has a hard time closing it out. And then maybe the experience of MacSed can get the job done.
Yeah, sometimes when you go and you try to take a ladle out of something, you figure out that it's actually still really hot and scalds your tongue. So you do have to be careful there. Oriana, maybe he needs to blow on the next side before he knocks them down, and maybe maybe that's the way to do it. But for now, we have game 3 in this one. 1 map. Someone moves on, someone stays home. Young versus old, experience versus novelty. Game 3.
In the bottom right side of Dragon Skills, we are looking at the main base of our Chinese Phoenix Colossus boy, representing Invictus Gaming. I hope he's still good friends with Jim, because that would just make me very happy. This is MacSed.
And in the upper left, in the red, for Mystery Gaming, one map, one life on the line here, Oriana.
What I do often worry about is when the less experienced player gets so close, right? And things are all going kind of well, but then it suddenly starts falling apart. Then it's really hard to stay just calm, cool, composed, collected, and focused heading into a game 3. Because this is where your hands start getting shaky. You're like, oh my god, I threw, like, how did I throw that? Everything was going so well. I killed every single Phoenix. It is really hard to just stay dialed in and still just believe in everything that you've been practicing. Because very often you're suddenly loading into the game, you're like, you know what? I'm going to go for this build, this random build that I don't do a whole lot, but I think it's going to work out perfectly just because you made a couple of silly mistakes towards the end of game 2 and you start second guessing yourself.
Yeah, certainly. And it's actually, you talk about mentality, that has been one of the, I think it's one of the things that is by far the slowest to develop. You look at a bunch of players that, again, they get there and they could just never quite. That was why Oliveira won his world championship, right? He talked about in multiple interviews about how, you know, he realized he was kind of winning the mind games. He didn't care about his results at all. So, well, obviously you care, but he felt that he was already overperforming. So, like, you know, at that point, it's all just gravy. I can't believe I'm here. And we saw everyone he ran into kind of crumble under the pressure there. We saw Maru, I think, very specifically do that after game 2. You never see Maru's head in his hands. He's always kind of this implacable, unshakable player. And he had his head in his hands. He was slumped over because he had so much pressure on him. Because it's the greatest TVD player of all time against this Chinese Terran who has had a good run, but should have been Maru's Katowice. So it's good. It's hopefully we're going to see Oriana kind of develop some of that mentality, because arguably, Roddy, you know, it's hard enough to be one of the best players in the world mechanically, but having the mental on top of it, I mean, that's just, you don't get as much practice.
No, it's really interesting to talk about the mental aspect of esports, because I had a lot of discussions with Grubby in the early days since we were both playing Warcraft 3, and I'll never forget one specific tournament where I was in a very tough group in the opening day of the World Championship, and I thought I was going to get bopped, but I actually did super well. I won the group, won every single best of 2 I played, and I was so happy that I advanced in the first group that my second group stage was actually easier, but I got completely destroyed in the second group. And I went over there, I was like, I was just so happy. I thought I was doing so well, and Grubby said, it's the early satisfaction. He's like, it's very dangerous. When you're already outperforming your expectations, you almost let go and you're less focused than you were in the beginning because you think you've already done great. But it's silly, right? Because obviously it doesn't really mean much if you do great in the first round, but then you do bad in the second. Well, maybe it could have been a mediocre performance in round 1 and a much better performance in round 2, which would obviously do a whole lot more for you. But yeah, there's so many ways to go about it, and obviously every single human just handles it differently, right? Some players, we can talk about it for days, and they're like, oh, I really don't care, man. I just sit down and I play some games because I like playing games. And then we are here analyzing it. It's like, oh, is it Y or Z? And they're like, no, I just like playing StarCraft, and I really don't think about any of that stuff. But for most of these guys, you can definitely see that they freak themselves out and they do start second guessing themselves, and sometimes experience does really matter. So once more, Oriana goes Raven. I know that it kind of worked out in that first game, BL, but I really have a hard time believing he's going to be able to keep that bad boy alive for as long as he did in that first game.
I mean, he did a great job of keeping the Raven alive in game 1, and I know you say it kind of, no, it really did work out. If Oriana had committed onto MacSed's army, that would have been an 8-minute game. You know, he did such a good job of keeping it alive, of making sure that nothing happened. And we do have to point out, though, for the first time in this series, MacSed has not lost a Phoenix in the first 5 minutes. Like, he has not sacrificed one, has not lost one to a random Cyclone. And that does mean that it's going to be a little bit harder to keep this Raven alive, as you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what it all comes down to. Now, MacSed is going to have that little bit of additional DPS, and obviously Phoenixes deal double damage against a Raven. Raven are light armored units, Medavacs are armored, and Phoenixes are always good against pretty much everything that flies, but especially against units like Phoenix and Raven that are light armored. Those units just disappear. Of course, the Mutas as well.
Well, luckily for the Protoss, there are no Mutas in this game, so we're fine there as Phoenix tried to dive into the main, and there are not enough Marines here. It's only 3 of them kind of defending. How do you feel about the lack of, I guess, missile turrets at this point? Really not a lot of defense against any sort of Phoenix harass right now.
I think it's a bit too early to be building turrets, because they just don't have a lot of units, as we do, and like with obviously Marines, a Widowmine, a Cyclone. There is enough firepower to keep the Phoenixes at bay. You want to build turrets if the Phoenix count gets high and you are forced to move out, but if you're just defending, you don't want to go into the turrets too early, because it just slows the rest down. There is a Widowmine there, and these Phoenixes have already taken a lot of damage. That's a double kill, and now MacSed is left over with 2 Phoenixes that have lifted the SCVs. The only thing that could have made all of that worse is actually that one Phoenix running out of the lift before the other Phoenix killed it. But one Widowmine killing 2 Phoenix at once. Oriana just seems to be very good against Phoenix in the beginning of the game, and that really is not an easy skill to manage as a Terran player.
That, you talked about, is the Raven going to stay alive? Well, it absolutely has. There's nothing to kill it anymore. I mean, I guess there are 2 Phoenix, but even with the double damage, it's not going to do that much all that quickly. So Oriana, he's on the other side. He's got his upgrades here. +1 done in about 12 seconds. So he's going to get himself set up. No tanks, though, so there is that. But he's just going to stim into the natural.
No.
And he disables... Oh, that's not what you want there. He disables a Phoenix. And now he can't take the fight. There's still a Colossus here, and it looked so good for him. It looked so good.
Yep,
But then he clicked wrong.
I know, it looked so good, and I really have a very hard time believing that that has nothing to do with nerfs, because I'm pretty sure that this man can play Raven against Phoenix over and over and over again, and he will never actually drop the interference matrix on the Phoenix. That was just a terrible misclick, because the difference between 1 Colossus firing or 0 is monstrous there. Nothing in that Protoss army is good against Tim Marines besides that 1 Colossus. If both Colossi are disabled, Oriana can obviously take a great trade, maybe stim into the natural, get a bunch of probes. That is a very costly misclick, potentially a game-ending misclick. Now the good news is that obviously before that, things did go very well for him, right? He did kill the Phoenix, his macro has been looking fine, his upgrades are going. So I want to say it's still anybody's game, but it's hard not to beat yourself up after such a big, expensive and costly misclick.
And yeah, this has also been one of those games where we have been very questioning. We found Oriana's mid to late game rather question, not necessarily micro, although that disruptor split or anti-split was not great in game 2, but his decision making. You know, do you go? When do you engage? How do you engage? Why do you engage? Where do you want to be on the map? And Oriana, his first 10 minutes has been very good in every game in this series. But as the game goes on, as we go to 3 or 4 bases, if he does not have that severe lead, it has been, you know, difficult for him. Even in the game 1 where he did have that significant lead, it has felt like he just hasn't quite known where he wanted to be and known how to close games out. So now MacSed losing a couple Phoenix is not great, of course, but you know, their job in part is to get MacSed into this position right now where he's 3 Colossus and he is charge done and he has these Archons and he has a much more complicated army. Well, he's there, and kind of that scary point has been mostly passed.
Yeah. Now, this is still a game that can play out in either way. I think we are all in agreement. If we were watching a Clem here or a Maru, they'd be like, oh, this looks really good for the Terran, right? But as powerful as that Protoss army can be, it's slightly easier to control than the Terran army, and some people usually say it's a whole lot easier. So on this level, which is a high level, but it's not the absolute highest level in the world, sometimes the Terran can just take bad fights. We don't expect them to take bad fights, because the Protoss units have a lot of potential. We've got a War Prism flying into the main base right now. Dealing with Prisms can be a nuisance. Plenty of Bio units are still chilling at that ramp though, so it shouldn't be too hard for Oriana to stim a couple of units towards these Zealots and take care of that. We saw the War Prism find a lot of success earlier. This one is not going to get a whole lot done. Good job by Oriana taking care of that. But yeah, now it just really comes down to we need to make sure our EMPs land. The target fire of the Vikings is good on the Colossus, and we can avoid those Purification Novas. Because if he doesn't do that, no matter how good the upgrades are, no matter how big the Terran army is, yeah, the Novas will obviously have a very big impact on the way that any fight plays out.
And Roddy, you said that Oriana handled the Warpins really well, and he did in the main, but not in the natural. His Vikings were not able to chase this down. He is doing a good job of denying the fourth base. MacSed has not been able to get that up, and we just see clumps of Terran all over the place, but that's a lot of Zealots waiting to run in. Not sure what the probe is, but you know, it's there, it exists. But you gotta, I mean, Oriana had so much time to kill the Warp Prism, and I guess he was just focusing elsewhere. But now he's just gonna have to keep this army home. He has that perpetual Warpin risk that just makes it so hard for him to be on the map.
Is kind of containing MacSed on 3 bases, and he's done a very good job in that regard. As we can take a look at the infrastructure setup of MacSed. MacSed does have that double robo, and there may not be a fleet beacon to make the Phoenixes more powerful, but it's not really about the Phoenix anymore for MacSed. MacSed right now cares about robo units, and he cares about the gateway units. I'm just a little bit worried for Oriana that the Novas are once more gonna find bigger connections than they are supposed to get. It's obviously a whole lot easier to fire a Nova than it is to split against one. And we get spoiled by watching the best, but obviously avoiding these Novas in these 200 supply fights is very difficult. And Oriana seems to struggle with it as Zealots show up once more on a painful moment right before that bunker is done. Warp Prism chilling in the main base. Only good news here for Oriana is that MacSed does not have supply to warp in any more Zealots in the main.
No, he doesn't. So it's going to work out fairly well, I guess, for Oriana. Losing 10 SCVs is never great. But the interesting thing, or the unfortunate thing for Oriana is, well, MacSed, I guess he had perfect vision. Or he saw it, I don't know. But pretty much right as Oriana moved out with the army that was kind of keeping us third base safe, we had the Zealots run in. But now, both players are maxed out. Oriana has his +2 attack done, +2 armor about halfway done here. He's sitting on 2 ghosts. He's going to go up to 4 by the time that max out is truly 100% in effect. But this is, I mean, this is a massive army here. Only 4 Vikings, though.
It's 31 Marauders, BL. 31 Marauders. Oh, MacSed does not have his entire army here. He's going to drop a couple of force fields to buy some time for that tiny army, but he almost could just recall maybe some of these units. Don't worry about it. It really... Oh, the Widow Mines are going to fire at the Phoenixes, and all the Phoenixes die. I mean, I don't know what I'm watching anymore. Now that army on the left side has turned around, it really is coming down to the Disruptors. The first Novas fly forward, and Oriana does a great job in gunning them down. One more Nova gets picked up immediately. The final ones doesn't really connect. If he had this kind of an army could draw on Babylon, this would have been a 2-0 already, BL. But perhaps it doesn't matter, because I do believe that Oriana is doing almost all the right things. One Nova does finally connect, but MacSed has lost the majority of his important units, as he does have one more Nova coming out, and now he lands the picture perfect one. Oriana was so close, BL. What's happening?
About half of, well, one medevac full of units was just sitting in the medevac throughout the entirety of that fight as well. So I don't know that one medevac's full really makes the difference there, but it was a little bit less DPS that Oriana had access to, that bought maybe a little bit more time. And now MacSed's on the other side of the map. He's down 2 upgrades. But remember, Roddy, we saw this happen last game. Down upgrades didn't matter. Although this time Oriana's supply is a little bit nicer, but you get shoved in, it becomes problematic. So the ghosts are here. Where are our EMPs? There we go. Big concave coming in from the Terran. At this point, Disruptor Shot does not land. And unlike the last time, the upgrades will matter here. They will carry the day. Oriana just comes right on through. And MacSed's last hope, his dream of staying in this tournament. Well, Roddy, it's done. It's dusted. There's nothing here anymore. MacSed, he's going to stay in a little bit longer because this is an elimination game, but I'm not sure how much more he can do.
That was a crazy moment for MacSed to attack, man. He must have thought that Oriana lost everything, but that's really not what happened, as Oriana's going to stim forward here, take out the final few units. Oriana will, but Pio, look at the production tab. +2 armor, a Phoenix, +2 attack, a Blink, and MacSed is going up to 4 bases while he had a 15 work lead. Like, he just attacked with 1 Colossus, 2 Disruptors, and a couple of gateway units. GG gets called. Oriana will move into the decider match of this group in the ESL Masters Asia.